think I had some in my arm socket.
You know what? It's possible that the gout literature is pretty clear on this, that most of the time it's in toe. It can be also in a knee, but now, as more work is being done in this area, there are also examples where people are having gout in other locations, like I talked about the spine. And also, I think that there are more and more connections being made with other crystalline joint diseases. The issue with calcium and pyrophosphate, I believe, is very real. And I mentioned that there's at least one paper that shows that at least in one person, they found crystalline uric acid along with crystalline calcium crystals. And the implication of this, if it turns out to be true, is that some of these weird cases that the doctors see, that where the person is expressing what looks like gout in multiple joints, like both knees, probably are going to turn out to be these calcium crystalline diseases, and may well be driven by the same central mechanism, the uric acid issue.
Yeah.
So, that's possible. Now, I want to get to the nitty gritty of what this lifestyle looks like eating wise. Because we have about 40 minutes left, up to the 4 hour mark, and I don't want to kill you guys. But the first thing I want to point out, and this blew my mind when I found this reference, is that you can find doctors writing about whole real food diets and the improvement in the gout condition going back to the 1850s. And this is a quote: "The best food lifestyle is a mixture of animal and vegetable food." Right? That's what they say. And they talk about the fact that milk diets, specialized diets that are like only the idea that you can't eat certain high purine meats like bacon, liver, and things like that, pure vegetable diets and starch diets don't work, right? They already knew this. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because somebody contacted me on my YouTube channel asking me recently about milk diets. That they tried it.
What is a milk diet?
They talked about it in this 1850 citation, somebody who's drinking exclusively milk.
Oh.
And I would say two things about that. How do you do that the whole rest of your life? Number one.
Oh my God.
And number two, they had data that showed that it didn't work. So the thing that I'm advocating, the whole real food diet, and then looking realistically at comorbidities, and then making a decision about what you need to do in order to get the gout into remission. And, along with the other comorbidity, well, out of the gate, we have to eliminate processed food. And this is going to make a lot of sense for other issues too. And juices
cause a lot of divorces.
Yeah, could be. I'm very fortunate in my marriage to have a wife who's got an open mind. Juices are really problematic.
Yeah.
Because you're delivering a high hyperglycemic load and fructose to the liver at the same time, and the liver just sitting back going, what on earth are you doing to me at this point? Right? It's a really big deal. And this shows up in sugar addiction a lot. In fact, I just had another conversation recently with a family member who just does not want to stop having their juice.
Yeah.
The potatoes of all types, rice of all types, grains, and added sugars. So here's my 30-day menu. I provided this to you guys in the Dropbox. Plus, I gave you the ebook where that 30-day meal is in there. And then the beauty is you can click on links to see the recipes, how I made the food. This is just an example. I realize there's cultural differences here. We have people from all different countries. So I'm not saying you got to eat this way to have gout remission. I'm saying this is an option, and I would suggest looking at it and going, all right, this is my culture, so how can I can get the theme here that this guy is doing, and then I can adjust relative to my culture. I can make things that mirror this, right? And have an example of how to do it.
Is there a downside to eating the same thing day in and day out?
I try to really diversify what I eat. So yesterday I had pork loin for breakfast, or it was the morning before. I don't remember. So I try not to do that every single day. Yeah, I try to mix things up. But one of the tricks that I use here is I try to make enough food at dinner so that the next morning with my eggs, I can have whatever protein I had at dinner in addition to the eggs. But I do eat eggs every single day. I love them.
I do
In the
too.
beginning, I didn't like eggs all that well. But when you go low carb, I have found your preference for different foods really diversifies. You end up craving different things, different kinds of fats, for example, and different kinds of meats. I have a preference for, whereas before, before starting this lifestyle, I looked at things. I had different cravings than I do now. It all happens in the process.
Mm-hmm.
This is just to give you an idea. We flipped the food pyramid on its head. And right now I live in a world that if you're going to actually calculate percents of macros, which I don't recommend doing, I'll get to my method here in a second, but I'm somewhere around 5% of total carbs a day. I've elevated my protein. Sometimes I'm up around 23%, again, because I'm super active. And I elevated the protein. I did that deliberately, and I feel better as a result. So, I mean, you make decisions that way. We're going to talk about fats. So I use the plate method, and this is my version of Atkins. If you think about a plate and you break it into three quadrants, and you think of it this way, okay, I'm going to have green listed vegetables. I'll show you examples of what I mean by that in a second. I'm going to have green listed vegetables in two parts of the plate, and then I'm going to have my protein in the third part of the plate. And like, we're thinking about this as a metaphor. So I think about this way when I eat. And it's basically 2 main meals a day, but because of my activity level, I have a third one, smaller amounts, but in the middle of the afternoon. But one of the crucial things, and we hear a lot of guys out in the space talking about this, like Dr. Sivas, when I eat, I sit down at the table and I treat it like it's a meal, right? So I'm not snacking between meals, right? So my first morning meal, and then the mid-afternoon thing, I'm still seated at the table, and I might have a green listed vegetable with some protein there, and then my dinner meal. But it's visualizing this plate method in the way that I'm eating. And you literally can put stuff down on a plate, and if you're eating this way, you don't need to be calculating macros. You're going to end up in the right place, basically. These are literal examples of meals I've eaten, literally. So you've got some breakfasts up there, and there's chicken liver there with some eggs. I think I have 3 eggs there. And this is to emphasize the point, because in a purine diet, they don't want you to have the liver at all. And they're saying having the liver is going to drive your gout. And honestly, I haven't seen that. For 4 years when I've had my liver, I haven't woke up the next morning with a gout flare. But when I went on to allopurinol and then came off of it, I had gout flares. So that's kind of my point. Liver is really good for you. It's just that you don't want to be eating it at breakfast, lunch and dinner. You don't want it for 3 meals in a row and be eating it every day. Down below, you can see the theme of my plates. So there's down on the left, there's protein there, yellow squash, and Japanese eggplant. In the middle is a roast soup that I make that has either beef roast that was slow cooked or pork roast that was slow cooked with celery in it, green beans, and some onions, right? Tastes really great. Then there's even a pizza. And the pizza was made with chicken crust. It was ground chicken and eggs and cream cheese. And then, I bake the crust first to make it golden brown. And then I put some tomatoes on it, some homemade from a particular source here in Phoenix, sausage that I know is really clean. It's a great pizza and didn't raise my uric acid, didn't push my glucose up. I mean, it was it was a great dish. And then you see the one on the right. So and this is the way I eat every day. Whoops. Here's an example. The one on the left with the basil, that is a Thai dish that I make, not using any of the standard processed food sauces, right? So I make my own curry sauce with this. There's no sugar in it. I've served it up there on the right. I don't eat it with rice, right? But I make rice for my wife, for example. Doesn't elevate my uric acid or significantly, or and there's no sugar in it, of course, or any of that. You can see the kind of salad I eat there on the right. I've got olives in it. Down on the left is the chicken ground soup that I make. And again, there can be I put some onions in it, celery in it, green beans in it, yellow squash, zucchini works great in it. And again, everything is stable in terms of my numbers. Uric acid, you can see some numbers there, 7.6. That was way back before allopurinol. That was like a few years ago.
And alternatives like alternative flours and stevia kind of stuff, I don't see any evidence of that kind of stuff.
No, I stay away from it because the alternative flours, the carbs are just too high.
Yeah.
For somebody who's trying to stay off of hyperglycemia, and for a gout sufferer, that's a big deal because of the hyperglycemic effect on the liver with the polyol pathway. Yeah. If you're also addressing eating disorder stuff like sugar addiction, stay the hell away from the damn flours, right? Yeah. That, it's just not. I have these discussions a lot. If you're 20 or 30 years old, like my daughter's on the verge of 30, and metabolically you're healthy, and you're doing this lifestyle because you don't want to end up like your dad who's 60 with gout and prediabetes, and you're cutting the carbs, then sure, you probably, I don't see a problem pushing out into the low carb environment more. What typically out there would be called low carb, like you're not going overboard with it. You're going to make some floury stuff that just has the almond flour. Okay, fine. But if you've looked at your health realistically, and you are like me, you suffered from gout, and then there is the diabetic thing. Stay away from it. Because you're just going to drive it. You're going to be driving it before you can shake a stick at it. Plus, we know from osteoarthritis data, of which there are hundreds of papers, that hyperglycemia is driving inflammation. Yeah. It's having a significant effect on your inability to use your joints.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay, so here's just a quick, and this is not exclusive, right? There are other green listed vegetables. I put my list in the Dropbox. but here are the common ones that you basically can eat all you want. And you can learn how to cook these multiple different ways. And you can combine these things into other kinds of dishes where you're having them all together, and even combined into meat casseroles and things like that. So a lot of this lifestyle has to do with really being creative and learning new ways to cook and think about food, right? In the early days, my wife used to say, gosh, seems like we're eating the same thing every single day, right? And honestly, it took me a while, because I'm the cooker, and I used to cook all kinds of different things. Now I've had to learn, right?
Right.
4 years later, what I'm able to cook is a lot different than where I started. It's just having the confidence and going, okay, I had steamed broccoli last night. I'm going to try roasting it tonight with olive oil and salt and pepper. And you know what? I actually like it that way a lot better.
Yeah, I do too.
So maybe put some bacon on it. There's just, or some Parmesan cheese even. I mean, there's all these things that you can do that doesn't affect what it's going to do to you, but changes how it tastes. And I believe that this lifestyle is really robust personally.
Where does bone broth fit in any of your?
Everywhere.
Yeah.
So does chicken broth.
Yeah.
Everywhere. It's a great thing to have.
Do you ever have it alone, or do you just use it to cook with?
I use it to cook.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I really like to make a lot of soup.
Yeah. Yeah, I make bone broth every week.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. I think we need to talk about the fat a little bit, because I've worked with some people that get it in their head that the only healthy oil is olive oil, and they're frying things in it. It's like, okay, one of the take-home messages here, and by the way, at the bottom I have soybean in black, but that's just as a reference.
Uh-huh.
I'm not advocating that you eat that. No, stay away from the seed oils. But I put it there for a reason, so you can see what the polyunsaturated fat content of that oil is compared to all of the rest of the natural healthy ones that are in yellow. These are the ones that I want you to think about eating. The black one there, no. And you can see what the percentage of the polyunsaturated fat is in that particular oil. Now, one of the things I want to point out about the yellow ones that people don't understand, because in this space, often people are saying, well, let's see, the olive oil and the avocado oil are the monounsaturates. But you got to understand, these fats have a proportion of all the different fats. If we look at ghee for a minute, you can see it's got polyunsaturated in there. It's a nice low quantity, which I like, but there's still some of it in there. I mean, humans need this stuff, right? The big problem with polyunsaturated fat is if you are on the standard American diet and eat a lot of processed food, the proportion of that particular fat that you have is way too high. So in the natural fats, the cool thing is you still are getting polyunsaturated fat. You're just not getting the proportion of it anymore that makes it unhealthy. And then you can look and you can see all these fats, the monounsaturated content plus the saturated fat. Remember that when we lower the carbs, we've lowered the insulin, we're burning fat. So what I try to do is eat all of these fats in moderation. I'm not eating just one of them. I like to cook in the beef tallow and the lard because they have, it's harder to push those into the smoke point. And I'm conscious of not overheating oil. You can overheat all these oils, right? Yes. So you don't want to put a frying pan on the stove, turn it on high, and then go do something for a while and come back and you're pushing smoke all into the kitchen, right? It's like, I put some oil in my pan, I turn it on, and I get it hot enough for what I'm doing. Sometimes I'll even turn it off at that point while I move across the kitchen to get whatever it is I'm going to put into it, and bring that over and then put it in there and then turn the flame back on and do what I need to do. But anyway, my point about this is that there's a wide variety of oils here, and I try to really mix up what I'm eating, because that's what humans did in the past. We didn't eat all one type of something. We
No
ate a
bacon
range.
fat?
Pardon?
No bacon fat?
No, I eat it. It's right there, lard.
Oh, okay.
I keep it. I keep my bacon fat, and then I use it.
Yeah.
And like if I'm cooking something where I want a little bacon flavor, like if I'm going to roast some broccoli, I might use some of the bacon fat for that.
Yeah.
So I'm super creative. I keep all the stuff in my refrigerator. I use coconut oil when I'm making Thai dishes from scratch. I like to bathe my salads in avocado oil because it doesn't have that acrid taste that olive oil can have sometimes. But I use olive oil to roast my vegetables in. And then I use the tallow and these other things when I'm going to fry something. So I don't know. I just use a range of them. And the point of this slide was to show you that these oils all have a range of different fats in them. And people tend to think about this in a hallway. If you're having ghee, you're having saturated fat. Well, it's true that ghee has, you can see 58%, almost 59% saturated fat, but it also has a lot of monounsaturated fat, and it even has polyunsaturated fat. So when you're eating these fats, you're not just eating one kind of fat. They do proportionate, but it's not one thing or the other. Like if you look at bacon tallow, about 44% of it's monounsaturated.
Yeah.
And over half is saturated fat, but there's still some polyunsaturated fat in it. Many of these guys in this space would argue that beef tallow gives you the greatest profile. I think the story on fats, honestly, is still out there. I don't think anyone knows exactly. Here's what I'm trying to say. I think you should be eating a variety of different fats. It's that simple, right?
Yeah, I got tested and I'm an APO4, so that's an unsettled issue too.
Well, I think if you follow Nick Norwitz, that he has talked about the fact that I think he mostly does. I could be wrong about this, but I think it's been a while since I listened to him, but I think that he's mostly doing olive oil and avocado oil in that case. So, I would encourage you to listen to some of the stuff that he talks about, because he addresses that.
Yeah, I will.
Okay, now on protein. So there's a few ways to calculate this. Remember that I don't really think you need to calculate this. Using the plate method of eating and how you feel is how I arrived at how much protein that I eat. But I was working with a nutritionist because I'm trying to do the best for myself, like you guys are. And she was like, well, how much protein you're eating every day? I go, well, this is how I do it. And she goes, well, we need to know how much. So I spent 10 days weighing this stuff out, putting it in the Fat Secret so we could sort this. And where I arrived was between 20 to 23% protein. And it answered the question, am I eating too much? And she was trying to make 2 points to me. The first point is that it's really hard to overeat protein. It's really super satiating. And 4 years into this lifestyle, I can tell you right now, I have a bite of some type of protein and I'm like, my body goes, all right, dude, you've had enough. I don't want to eat anymore. That's what happens to you. Anyway, here are 2 ways that you can calculate your protein, and notice that both of them arrive at the same number. So you can figure this out by knowing your weight. You divide by 2.2 pounds because that's going to give you the conversion to kilograms. And if your eyes are glazing over, you can look at this later on the slides that are in the Dropbox, and you can calculate this out and you can weigh it. Now, I know that Cynthia knows, and also I know somebody in the sugar addiction space that is measuring their protein out every single day because they're having an eating issue with it. And they're struggling and they're trying to sort this out. So I'm not sitting here telling you that you should never weigh your food out. Again, this is a thing where you've got to go, okay, in today's presentation, I'm a gout sufferer, I have diabetes, and maybe I have a sugar addiction. So what am I going to do? And in terms of gout, we need to eliminate yada, yada. We've talked extensively about that. And if I start and I go carnivore to reverse my gout, some people do that with great success. Some are not so successful. But on carnivore, they notice that this is driving them into a binge. Then maybe they have got to not only weigh out what they're going to eat specifically, but they may also have to address which of those meats is driving the eating, because you open this pathway with meats that are high in glutamate and have high nuclear levels of the compounds that drive fructose uric acid metabolism. And so in this world of meat, you might be in a situation where you go, okay, pork is actually, I don't know if this is the case or not, right? But I'm just saying that pork is the thing that actually starts to drive this need for me to get up out of my seat and go get more of it. So maybe that has to be lowered in your eating program. And maybe you raise up the amount of beef or chicken or fish. You know, I don't know what that situation is, but you have to sort this the same way that we're talking about the gout issue here. You've got to sort what's going to work for you and what is not working for you, right? And I know that pork is one of those things. Oh, I said I need to look up that slide. I'll see about putting that data in the Dropbox, but the one that tells you which proteins have the most glutamate and inosine monophosphate and adenosine monophosphate. I can put that slide in the Dropbox. So, because I know that issue may exist. And it could exist for gout too, because I've had at least one person who contacted me that seems to be having an issue with the fats. But I think that was also sleep apnea. We'll find out because this individual is going to get sleep tested. Now, the purpose of this slide, and the reason I put this in a couple, is because there's a lot of people that when we talk about hyperglycemia and the added sugar and stuff like that, honestly, they just don't get it. Salad dressings are absolutely some of the worst that you buy off the shelf, and you think, all right, well, this can't be bad. But then look at the ingredient list here. There's high fructose corn syrup in it. There's soybean oil and so on. This is going to open these pathways. You're going to open fructose uric acid wide open, especially if you're an individual like me that preferred to drench their salads in their dressing. So you probably want to make your own dressing. And I actually have, I show you a recipe for this dressing in my Dropbox. That's one of the things you can click on, and you can see a really excellent dressing that you can drench your salad in and not drive your uric acid or your glycemia or any of those things that you don't want to be doing up.
Grow your lettuce. You won't want to drench it.
Okay. Here I chose this one because this is the favorite drink from a store that everybody knows that supposedly is known for having really healthy things on their that people literally buy off the shelf without even looking at the without looking at the labels. And this has got a crap load of sugar in it. Juices are really bad voodoo for this stuff, right? Johnson will tell you it's the last thing that you want to be eating, because you will open, it's the hyperglycemic high fructose corn syrup, you're going to open the pathway.
What about apple cider vinegar?
Okay, well, I use apple cider vinegar with absolutely no uric acid effects to make my salad dressing, so I don't think there's an issue with that. This is just to point out, we have Coca-Cola here on the left, and on the right we have a typical drink that's marketed for exercise recovery, and you can see it's got 63 grams of unrefined carbs in it. Just run out of the store if you want to avoid a gout flare. Basically, if you're a gout sufferer and you're drinking this stuff, it's really bad. People often ask me, what does your day look like? This is it. I have 3 cups of coffee in the morning. I put 1 tablespoon of heavy cream in it, a pinch of salt. My mid-morning breakfast, you're looking at a real one there. There's 3 eggs. I've got some high-fat sour cream on the eggs, with a little bit of hot sauce that I know is sugar-free. And then there's fried or warmed up, I should say, I baked it, pork belly that I baked to prepare it. And then all I did was fry it quickly in the morning to heat it up. And that's what you're looking at there. And then a typical dinner meal for me that has salmon, green beans, and cauliflower. And on the right, you can see, I call it a Bamo salad. It's a big salad. I've got olives in it, a few cuts of avocado, and so on, with my dressing on it. Nothing from a store.
Yeah.
My day looks like this. I try to get 6 to 8 hours of sleep. Often I test my biomarkers in the morning. I don't do them every day anymore because I don't need to. Usually my morning meal is between 9 and 11. I'll have a mid-afternoon snack, especially if I worked out or went to the climbing gym. And then I try to have my dinner between 5 and 6. So this goes back to the time-restricted eating. We're going to talk about exercise today, but it's really important to do what you can. The main reason for this is because your muscle tissue has by far, over any other organ, the greatest effect on the disposal of glucose and on insulin expression. And without it, we are really hampering the capabilities of our other organ systems to deal with the amount of carbs that we're eating, even if we're low carb, right? So the other thing to remember is your kidneys are responsible for about half of the glucose metabolism in a human. So if you neglect the muscle tissue, now you're putting a burden on the kidneys to deal with it, to deal with the insulin glucose relationship. So exercise is super important. And, you know, even if it's just trying to get to a point where you're walking every day is super important. We're going to talk about exercise again a little bit. The stress management is huge. Cortisol, which ties into the sleeping, right? If we have cortisol elevation going on, some people have asked me about gout and cortisol, and I have not had the time yet to go down that rabbit hole, but I am certain when I do that, and I do the next gout intensive, probably we're going to be talking about that. So trying to figure out the stress management is really imperative. We all have it. It comes in a million different places, from the relationships we have at the family level, our work environment, our eating environment, all of this stuff. Even trying to put gout in remission is going to bring stress. So figuring out how to do gout remission, keeping things one day at a time, one step at a time, being commonsensical about what we do, and using common sense. The slow race is the one that's going to win. Staying away from going, oh my God, all this is happening to me. Somebody just give me the shot. Well, there is no shot, right? There is no shot for this. It's one step at a time, and just doing one thing at a time to figure things out. Usually in the mid-afternoon, I want to emphasize, I treat the mid-afternoon thing. I'm not snacking from my morning meal to the evening meal. I'm having a mid-afternoon meal. Most of the time it's small. And it involves leftovers from the night before. Usually, if I'm out of those, then cheese plus some type of protein. What is an example of that? Smoked salmon, for example, from the store. I would combine with protein. Could be an example of that. Salami will work, but be careful, because salami, dry salamis and things like that, that's processed meat. What does that mean? It means that the concentration of glutamate and inosine monophosphate, monosodium glutamate, those things are going to be elevated in processed meat. So if I do have some salami, I don't get in a habit of eating that every single day. I'm not saying never have it. Like, it's useful to have on a road trip. You're driving somewhere, the mid-afternoon arrives and you're a little bit hungry. You don't want to get off your food plan. So I will have prepared for me in a cooler, cheese cut up, and salami's really handy. It's just that, and it tastes really good too. It's just that I don't want to end up get into this habit like the guy I told the story about who's eating anchovies every day. That could lead to a gout flare, right? So it's not something I do. I'm just careful is all I'm saying with it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll do a salad for that mid-afternoon thing that will have maybe some cut up protein from the night before on it. If I had, I don't know, chicken the night before, I'll put some pieces of chicken on the salad. And that's what I do for the afternoon.
Is there any evidence about food combination? Like, do you need to have protein with the salad for it to all work?
Oh, no. There have been times when I'm open the refrigerator and I'm out of protein. So I just make a salad that has, on the salads that I make, what I'll do is I'll put avocado oil on it, salt and pepper. I've got, cucumbers, and I'm careful not to overdo tomatoes. Avocado cut up on there, really great source of fats. And there are some carbs in it, but I've learned over time it doesn't affect me. Again, you can use finger sticking to see what's going on with all of these things. Keep that in mind, common sense.
Yeah. And what about food order? I mean, like, sometimes I've just read recently that you eat, I think just a certain order of the protein, vegetables, and carbs. If you're, starchy things, that you prepare the digestion better if you eat things in order. A certain
That's
order.
That's probably true. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And as a gout sufferer, I mean, I would keep my principles firmly in mind. What I'm eliminating, what I need to eliminate. And then, but in the low carb lifestyle where you're at 50 grams of total carbs per day, you shouldn't actually be in a situation where you're going to eat some carbs and therefore you need to do it in the following order.
Yeah.
Now, to be candid, I'm experimenting all the time, and I've been eating this way for 4 years. So I've been experimenting lately about bringing some complex carbs back into my life. But at risk of telling you this, I am not giving you permission to go out there like what we hear out there and go, oh, so that means I can have a cheat day. I can go have my pizza and beer or whatever, right? I'm not saying that you do that. I'm just saying this is some stuff that's come back on me. So when I hear conversations out in other electronic forums, okay, if you do it in this order, you're going to be all right. Oftentimes these guys are making that argument because they have a sugar addiction problem and they want to be able to have their drug.
Yeah.
So they're like, how can I do this so it'll still be okay?
Yeah, I get it.
So I'm not saying that, but what I'm trying to do with my workout schedule, so you understand where I'm coming from, is I'm like, maybe at dinner, if I try like half of a slice of a complex type of protein that I know I can eat that it's not a trigger food for me. I know what my triggers are.
Yeah.
Will that help me feel better the following day when I go back to the climbing gym? So I am playing around with a little bit of stuff like that, but I'm not using, I know Cynthia will appreciate this, I'm not using this as a way to go, well, I can't drink a beer with this meal, but what if I take a shot, I cut it down to a quarter of a shot in some club soda, and I drink that only after I have my protein and my fat. Okay, yeah. So the two things are completely different issues.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Restaurants. Remember, restaurants are processed food. They really are. So you got to know your restaurants. And I'm not saying you should never go eat out, but if you're going to meet some people at a restaurant, you do have the capability to go online and look at their menu. And maybe you could get your friends to go to a different restaurant if it turns out that the restaurant they want to go at makes it really almost impossible for you to eat at. Now that, for me, that doesn't happen that often, but it has happened.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, you guys, would you consider maybe this other place? Right? And if that doesn't work, then I eat before I go.
Yeah, no, I've done that.
So, and there are lots of things you could do at a restaurant. Eating a la carte is one of them. Sauces are pretty much really dangerous. And, ask questions. I understand psychologically how hard this is, because I'm always afraid of being that guy. The waiter or the waitress is going to go, oh my God, another one of these. It's a difficult place to be. But I've also, after 4 years, I've learned. Usually you can see the red flags coming a mile away. And it's like, okay, I'm not ordering that. And look at the a la carte, ask the questions you feel comfortable asking. You can always eat before you go. I do that a lot. In fact, with my wife and I, we just had a thing over at a friend's house not that long ago. And she's asking me, what are you going to do? As I was preparing the food that I ate before I went over there. So
yeah,
that's a good way to go. Okay, this goes back to some questions that Susie was asking me about. Being ketogenic as a gout sufferer is a good idea because you're generating beta hydroxybutyrate, and we know that this inhibits the inflammatory process. And in fact, it inhibits the very inflammatory process that is required for gout. But you're walking a balancing line because of the hyperuricemia down the road, right? The amount of ketones, if they're being at a certain threshold, you're going to be pushing those out into the urine. And when that's happening, it's going to cause an elevation in uric acid because the uric acid can't get out. So this is where you're looking for expressing ketones, I have found, is best between 0.5 millimolar and 1. And if you can stay in that range, then it seems like the effect on the uric acid is minimal, but it's beneficial to be in ketosis,
Yeah.
just lower level.